For a very long time now, there's been debates and discussions surrounding what is objectively worse, All-Stars or Pahkitew. Funny enough, both happen to come from the exact same season of Total Drama, just with All-Stars being the front half and Pahkitew being the back half. Not sure why Pahkitew wasn't called Season 6, since Revenge of the Island is its own thing, but I digress. So on today's list, we're going to figure out which is the worst of the worst, All-Stars or Pahkitew. If you're curious on my thoughts surrounding which is the best of the best, Island or World Tour, be sure to check out that video, which of course I'll have linked down below. Lastly, before we dive into this topic, be sure to click that like and subscribe button so I know you like my content. Without further options, let's begin. Alright, first up to bat, let's talk about Total Drama All-Stars. This season starts off with bringing back 14 characters, with half being the first generation, and the other being the second generation. Already this sounds like a great idea until you realize that the Revenge of the Island cast doesn't have nearly as much screen time nor characters as the first generation. It also adds the cherry on top to the insult to injury when you realize that not everyone they brought back was All-Star worthy. Looking at you, Sam and Sierra. Now, before I get angry comments defending Sierra, let me just say this. Yes, she made it to the final 3 in World Tour, but there's also way more entertaining characters I think would make the All-Stars list, such as Lashana, Owen, Brick, Justin, Cody, B, honestly, even Dawn I'd take over Sierra. As I've also pointed out before, I give Revenge of the Island more leadway when it comes to All-Star worthy, simply due to the fact that they only have one season prior to All-Stars, and it has the smallest cast out of the entire series, with only 13 contestants.
The dump! Revolting and reasonably priced.
As for the rumors surrounding Owen, Cody, Brick, and Anne-Maria being in All-Stars prior to being switched out, even if that was the case, there's still many other characters that I'm sure will be far more entertaining than the likes of Sam or Sierra. As much as I liked Sam in Revenge of the Island, his presence was definitely not needed in All-Stars. Moving on to the next issue that All-Stars has is his character derailment. Pretty much, even if I were to go on and say that Sam and Sierra are the only 2 characters that shouldn't have been in All-Stars, which is kinda true, the rest of the cast isn't really themselves. Let me explain. While the rest of the cast is pretty stacked with big name characters such as Alejandro, Heather, Duncan, Gwen, Lightning, Cameron, Mike, etc., they pretty much all are mega ultra nerfed because the writers dug themselves a hole so deep they made it to China. You see, in order to sell the whole Mal villain sitch, they had to go in and make everyone else borderline stupid so Mal could pick them off one by one. It gets vastly irritating when you get to the final episodes and it's just a compilation of Zoe winning over and over again.
Mike throws himself under the bus so that Zoe wins immunity! Boom! Just like that, Zoe wins the challenge! I care for how you did it, but you did do it. Zoe wins again!
Thanks to, you guessed it, Mal. Overall, Mal being the villain wouldn't be a problem if everyone else around him wasn't nerfed, or perhaps if Mal was actually a better villain. Honestly, the villainous acts Mal does is downright pathetic. He just goes around breaking stuff, and his sudden demeanor change is so obvious. I'm surprised the writers were even able to give a narrative for it at all. Cameron, who is Mega Mind Jimmy Neutron level smart, who keep in mind was able to successfully diagnose all of Mike's other personalities, had no clue of Mike's sudden change in demeanor. Zoe, who is Mike's literal girlfriend, who is closer to Mike than anyone else, while having seen Mike act suspicious, and is being told by Duncan and Alejandro about Mal's existence earlier on, still doesn't put the 2 pieces together. Like, it's not rocket science here. Aside from this, you have Duncan, who went from a juvenile delinquent, who did his devious and nice acts very subtle, to just downright asking if everything he does is bad. Then you have Gwen, who wants nothing more in life than to fix things with Courtney, despite her statements in World Tour, and even All-Stars, making it crystal clear she didn't care whatsoever about Courtney's feelings, since she was under the impression she didn't do anything wrong, by literally saying you can't steal a boyfriend if the boy is free. And as a matter of fact, she seemed just fine with it at the beginning of Revenge of the Island, so you tell me. Speaking of Courtney, she flat out ruins everything by backstabbing Gwen even after finally forgiving her when Gwen ends things with Duncan. That should have been the end of this undead dumb love triangle. I said undead because it should have actually died at the end of World Tour. Point blank period. Unfortunately, Courtney just ends up just using Gwen for her vote and makes a chart which Mal exposes and completely ruins everything. To completely backtrack on Gwen and Courtney's development is just so wrong on so many levels.
Oh, come on!
Heather, the Queen Bee from Island, the underdog in World Tour, just simply gets all her strategic powers sucked dry and is restored to just arguing with Joe. Master Manipulator Alejandro goes from his behind-the-scenes schemes to stupidly putting out everything he does in the open, which heavily backfires. Overall, you get the point. All-Stars completely derails everyone in some way, shape, or form. It also doesn't help at all that there's not really anything done with this crossover. Specifically, there's no notable interactions that really stand out for the better. And no, I'm not talking about Sierra pretending Cameron is Cody. That was just absolute torture to watch. Just when you think this half of the season can't get any worse, you realize the challenges aren't at all revamped versions of previous challenges. Instead, they barely add anything to them, and it just feels like the same game with no charm. Chris's behavior is utterly atrocious, with him forgetting to feed his starving interns, and it's clear prison did him no favors. Chef's involvement is little to none here, and it's so sad to see his character drop to an NPC. And as much as I like the heroes versus villain concept on paper, in reality it just ends with everything being one-sided. On one hand, you have the villain side being nothing but drama, and on the hero side it's nothing but sunshine and rainbows, so it ultimately just ends up making things too unbalanced. I could also dive into the many pointless plot points like exploring Duncan's lore of him and Mal and Juvie together, which could have made for an epic Mike backstory, but at this point, it's crystal clear. All-Stars sucks. Point blank period. It's pretty much a wrap. Honestly, you want to know the worst part out of all of this? I could forgive a big chunk of All-Stars if they didn't absolutely kill the ending. After all the torture of watching Mal, his demise is concluded by a stupid button. Yes, you heard me right. Similar to Dragon Ball Super's Goku Black Arc, it all ends with a button. That's right, no epic Mike vs. Mal throwdown showdown battle, it's just the press of a button. Don't ask me what they were thinking on that one, because pretty much from start to finish, All-Stars was an absolute dumpster fire.
This is Total Drama Pahkitew Island!
Alright, now it's time to take a look at how Pahkitew Island fails in comparison. The back half of this season introduces us to 14 brand new characters, all of which are pretty much unlikable. To be completely transparent here, Sean and Jasmine carried here, no questions asked. With Sean's survival training for the zombie apocalypse, it made him a very formidable opponent, and his zombie persona never got old. Jasmine, being insanely tall and strong, was able to punch down a tree with no effort whatsoever, and it really packs a punch when you finally see them get together. Too bad I can't say the same for Sky and Dave. Easily one of the worst total drama characters of all time, Dave just whines and whines over and over to Sky to the point where he's a liability to his team. What makes this so insufferable is the fact that at the beginning, he wasn't always like this. He was like a voice of reason to the rest of the team, and they threw it all away. Why? Rodney definitely would have been a fan favorite for sure if he didn't like every single girl he encountered, and basically left himself in a trance, so to speak. Amy just bullied Sammy the entire time for absolutely no reason, which ended up costing her the game. Topher's whole thing was to take over Chris's job, which is a cool concept, but executed poorly. Sure, Max and Sammy weren't all that bad, but it would have been nice to see Max accomplish a little bit more. I get he's all comedic relief, but still. More or less, most of these characters pretty much fall into the underutilized territory. I suppose Beardo's sound effects could have also been used at the proper time, but either way he just didn't amount to nothing, and Leonard was just a cry for help. Guy actually thought he was a wizard, and it's sad his team actually went along with it, which resulted in their defeat. Probably the most underutilized is the island itself. After Camp Oanakwa sank at the end of All-Stars, we wondered what new location we would see next, and it turns out it's an artificial island with all sorts of high-tech gadgets, which sounds absolutely amazing until you realize Chris doesn't make it known that it's artificial until episode 10. If this was brought up way earlier, it could have made for a lot of cool interesting storylines for Chris, as well as the contestants even. For example, have Scarlet and Max fight for power over the island, or together against Sugar and the others, basically where it turns into an all-out war, or even Chris using the weather functions and robotic animals in more creative ways. It all just felt so underwhelming. Moving to the villain side of things, there really isn't one. I'm not gonna sit here and say that Sugar is one because she barely does anything, other than being really gross. Honestly, more disgusting than Owen has. The only one I could even remotely call a villain was Scarlet. The problem with this is that she isn't revealed as a major threat until episode 10, the very episode she's eliminated in. As for Chris's behavior, it's a lot worse, with the contestants not getting shelter or even meals unless they win a challenge. Speaking of the challenges, I will give them credit here. Most of them are honestly not that bad, with some I'd even call good, such as Truth or Scare or Hurl and Go Seek. Despite how gross it is, the dreaded rainfall and zombie effect coupled with Sean and Jasmine making up at the end more than makes up for it. I wish I could say the same good news about Chef's involvement, but unfortunately he's still an NPC with even less lines. The last bone to pick for Pahkitew Island is the finale. Instead of focusing on the final challenge, you know, the whole point of winning Total Drama, they instead decided to bring Dave back and expose Sean's confessionals to cause tension between each relationship, which in turn makes Dave look like a bald douchebag and Sean look like an inconsiderate dick. At the bare minimum, if they're going to expose this, at least make it where it's not through Chris so it doesn't feel as forced. Alright, now that we broke down each half, which is worse, All-Stars or Pahkitew? And while both are horrible in their own way, I'm going to just come out and say it. All-Stars is a lot worse, and here's why. To me, it hurts a lot more to see our beloved characters get nerfed so hard that it's almost like they're brand new characters in a sense. Basically, they're discarded like trash compared to these new characters who don't have much layers to themselves to begin with. To put it simply, All-Stars tries way too hard to make Mao look like a threat when he's really not. Pahkitew Island lets you know right out the bat to take its goofy personality at face value. So for better or for worse, Pahkitew doesn't do much, with a lot of things being underutilized, while with All-Stars takes what was already established and completely ruins it. Almost like they're going backwards. Watch Sunday Muddy Sunday if you really need a refresher. So all in all, that's it. All-Stars is a lot worse than Pahkitew Island. If I'm being honest here, I think Pahkitew Island is a little overhated, while All-Stars definitely deserves the hate here. Now, I might be going a little too far by saying that All-Stars vs Pahkitew doesn't seem like a fair fight, but if you really deep dive into this versus battle, it doesn't sound too far-fetched. But either way, both halves aren't winning a good noodle star here anyway, so that's that. Alright viewers, that's the end of this list. Do you agree with my take, or do you think Pahkitew is the one to get the boot? Let me know in the comments down below. And with all that said, I look forward to seeing you with our next list.